Welcome. Today on Tuesday Tip, we will follow up on some of the items mentioned last week. First, let's talk about the house rules. Have you or do your house rules need to be updated to include things like how many business days after receiving additional income should the resident come in and report? We have cases where we have calls and the resident will say, well, they didn't tell me when I needed to report my new job. So make sure that your house rules explains that you want them to come in 14 days after receiving the job or 10 days, 10 business days after receiving the job into the office to report the new income. It should include things like visitations. How long can overnight guests stay? Does a resident have to obtain acknowledgement or permission from the office? What length of time is considered abandonment and extenuating circumstances? We had a congressional note from HUD and the Congress office about a senior citizen who left the unit, has been gone 2 years. Is that abandonment or was it extended absences? You need to have in your house rules what time period is considered for abandonment and what time period is considered for extended absences and what they need to prove those things. Next, the package drop-off for the residents. Now, this is kind of new to us, but COVID, our new norm, put us there. People were beginning to order offline from Amazon and Federal Express, and the packages that they were ordering were too large to go into a small mailbox. So the delivery trucks wanted to leave them at the office. Is that something that you will participate in or that you will not participate in? You need to let the residents know. Also, banning and trespassing residents, guests from the property. Make sure that they know who's banned and who's trespassed from the property. Next is that important unit inspection with housekeeping and hoarding, and when will you make unit inspections? We had a lot of calls when we first were on lockdown for COVID, and managers wanted to know, we're not able to do our annual unit inspections. What do we do? You need to, in your house rules, explain to the residents that there will be a yearly house inspection. Most good companies do them biannually, but they need to know. And the house rules is the place that you need to put it. Next, what about the termination of assistance for violations? How many violations will a resident receive before you terminate assistance or tenancy? Notification on the procedures when a resident has moved someone on their lease out. Does your house rules tell them to notify the office if a person who has signed the previous lease moves out of the unit? And if so, what is that time frame? Now, the big bad wolf, bed bugs. Does your house rules explain the bed bug treatment, the responsibility, and the cost? Does it tell the resident what their responsibilities are and what management's responsibilities will be? Most of you have a bed bug policy. Some of you don't. If you don't have a policy, make sure it mentions or there's something put in the house rules, because your house rules are an extension of your lease. And when we have calls from residents and we have to call HUD, the first thing they ask us is, what do the house rules say? So your house rules help you govern your property along with the lease. One of the new things that we talked about a little bit last week was communication with the residents. When a staff member has been diagnosed with the COVID virus, how will you notify the residents? Residents going into rehab, having to stay with a relative, or needing to stay longer than expected, that would be up in that extended period. What about your policies and procedures? Does your staff know how management will communicate with residents for emergencies? Is there a time limit for turning your units? Is there a policy for sanitizing the unit once it's turned? Is there a policy for replying to congressional inquiries or to HUD? Is there a policy on the census workers? Now, we've got a lot of calls lately. They want to know, do we have to let them talk to our residents? There was a high-rise building, and the census worker wanted to go door to door, knocking on the doors to talk to the elderly. How will you handle that? One manager said that she told everybody in the building when the census workers would be there, and they just came downstairs to talk to the census workers. We're in the middle of COVID, so that's a lot to think about. But that should be in your policies and procedures. Another thing in your policies and procedures should be the Vawa Emergency Transfer Plan. Now, this is something that we're seeing out on MORs. A lot of management companies are using that template that HUD put out there for the Vawa Emergency Transfer Plan, but they're leaving off the fact that HUD sent out another notice telling you that it was just a template and that you have to curtail it and critique it for your property. So remember that. The waiting list management. If you're using an electronic waiting list, how often are you telling the staff to update and print that list? Because when we come out for an MOR, we're going to be looking for the printed list. How do you keep up with the veterans and the homeless that are applying? A lot of people had said, well, I'm going to put that on my application. Are you a veteran? Are you homeless? But we've been seeing a lot of applications that information is not on. So how are you doing it? Those are just things for you to think about. Join us next week as we navigate our way through compliance with another Tuesday tip. See you then.
Did you like this video? Hit the like button below. Do you want to see more content just like this? Be sure to subscribe to all our social media platforms. And if you know someone who could really use this information, be sure to share it.